The first fracture in Ethan and Chloe's 10-year marriage didn't appear with a scream, but with a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon that cost more than their first month's rent. It was a Thursday. Date night. A tradition Ethan had clung to with the desperate devotion of a man sensing the ground shifting beneath his feet. He'd prepared her favorite, lemon herb roasted chicken, the way her mother used to make it. The table was set with the nice linen napkins, the wedding china they only used twice a year. When her key turned in the lock at 8:17 p.m., an hour late, the air in their tastefully renovated brownstone seemed to change density. She floated in, not walked. Her charcoal blazer was slung over her arm, her silk blouse untucked at one hip. Her cheeks were flushed, not from the cool autumn air, but from something warmer, more intoxicating. "Ethan, you're a saint," she breathed, dropping her leather tote bag with a thud that spoke of expensive weight. She didn't kiss him. She breezed past, the ghost of unfamiliar cologne trailing in her wake. Spicy, woody, expensive. Traffic from the waterfront was a nightmare. Marcus kept us so late. Marcus Thorne. The name had become a third presence in their home over the last 6 months. Chloe's new boss, the visionary founder of Thorne Innovations, a tech-adjacent marketing firm that was the current darling of the city's elite. He'd poached Chloe from her stable, mid-level agency job with a salary that made Ethan's eyebrows climb and promises of creative freedom that made her eyes shine. Ethan, a structural engineer who built bridges that held, watched as his wife was seduced by a man who traded in illusions. "Long strategy session?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice neutral as he poured her a glass of the waiting wine. She took it, gulping a large swallow. "Strategy. Brainstorming. You know how it is with visionaries. The energy just flows. It's infectious." She finally looked at him, her eyes bright with a borrowed glow. "We closed the Atherton account today. 7 figures. Marcus took the whole team to the Gilded Oyster to celebrate." The Gilded Oyster. Ethan had read about it. A members-only haunt where the cocktails had names like Hostile Takeover and Liquid Equity. He pictured his wife, laughing in a banquet, leaning into the orbit of a man who probably owned the banquet. "Sounds like a big win," Ethan said, serving the chicken that had now gone lukewarm. "It's more than a win, Ethan. It's validation." She sat, swirling her wine. "Marcus sees potential in me, real potential. He says I've been a diamond in the rough, polished by the wrong hands." Ethan's own hands, he supposed. The hands that had held her through her father's funeral, that had fixed her coffee every morning for a decade, that had built the very walls around them. Rough, utilitarian hands. Dinner was a monologue. Marcus's brilliant pivot on the campaign. Marcus's hilarious takedown of a competitor. Marcus's stunning penthouse view. Marcus. Then, as Ethan cleared the plates, she dropped the bomb. Not with malice, but with the casual, breezy excitement of suggesting they try a new sushi place. "So, Marcus had the most fascinating idea," she began, topping up her glass. "For the core leadership team. A bonding experience. He says true innovation requires breaking down conventional barriers, creating ultimate trust." Ethan stood at the sink, his back to her, the water running over a plate. "A ropes course?" he asked, his tone dry. Her laugh was a tinkling bell. "God, no. Something far more sophisticated. He's a member of this incredibly private society, the Veritas Club. It's for couples only. Very exclusive, very discreet. It's not a business thing. It's a lifestyle enrichment thing. He and his wife, Sloane, go all the time. He invited us as their guests." The water was scalding his hands. He turned it off. Slowly, he turned around, drying his hands on a towel. "Lifestyle enrichment. The Veritas Club. What does that mean, Chloe?" She met his gaze, a challenge sparking in her previously glazed eyes. "It's a swingers club, Ethan." The words hung in the kitchen, vulgar and impossible among the Sub-Zero appliances and Carrara marble, but he didn't shout. His voice dropped to a low, careful register, the one he used when explaining why a foundational stress calculation was non-negotiable. "You're suggesting that we, as a married couple, go to a sex club with your boss and his wife. Don't be so medieval," she scoffed, but a flush crept up her neck. "It's about liberation, about exploring the edges of human connection without jealousy. Marcus says possessiveness is the currency of the insecure. This is about transcending petty bourgeois hang-ups." "Petty bourgeois hang-ups," Ethan repeated, each word a brick. "Like fidelity? Like privacy? Like the basic, fundamental agreement we made in front of everyone we love. See, that's your problem." She stood up, the chair scraping. You see everything in black and white, in load-bearing walls and stress tests. Life isn't a blueprint, Ethan. It's messy and fluid and artistic. Marcus and Sloane have a partnership most people dream of. They have freedom, and they want to share that perspective with us. He saw it then, with crystalline clarity. This wasn't about them. This was about her and Marcus. The invitation was a test, a loyalty test for her, and a humiliation ritual for him. Marcus was probing the boundaries of his influence, seeing how far he could make Chloe stray and how much her husband would swallow. The answer is no, Ethan said, the finality in his voice like a vault door slamming. Not just no, but never. And the fact that you would bring this into our home, that you would even consider it, the disappointment that flashed across her face wasn't for a rejected experience. It was the disappointment of a strategist whose key maneuver has been blocked. The warmth, the borrowed glow, vanished, replaced by a cold, assessing sharpness. Fine, she said, the word clipped. Stay in your little box. Build your little bridges. But don't expect me to live in there with you, slowly suffocating. She took her wine glass and left the room. The fracture was no longer a hairline crack. It was a chasm, and on the other side, Ethan saw a stranger. The following month was a cold war waged in whispers and silent treatments. Chloe worked later, came home smelling of that cologne and rooftop bars. She stopped asking about his projects. She started dressing differently, sharper, more expensive, more like the women in the society pages Marcus Thorne appeared in. Ethan buried himself in work. His current project was a monumental, complex pedestrian bridge spanning the old industrial canal. It was all geometry and physics, a world of pure logic where A plus B always equaled C. At night, he began a different kind of calculation that he knew of Marcus Thorne. The city wasn't that big at the top. Thorne's reputation was a sleek facade over a foundation of leveraged debt and aggressive, often shady, intellectual property acquisitions. The man was a parasite in a Brioni suit, attaching himself to real creators, sucking them dry, and moving on down a deep, instinctual part of Ethan, the part that understood load and counterload, tension and compression, knew this wouldn't end with a declined invitation. Marcus had been rebuffed. A man like that didn't retreat. He escalated. He was right. Exactly 37 days after the Veritas Club proposal, Chloe served him divorce papers. They arrived not from a process server, but from her, placed neatly on his drafting table one morning as he made coffee. "It's over, Ethan," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion she'd ever shown him. She was dressed for battle in a cream-colored power suit. "We've grown into different people. I need space to grow. I've consulted with a lawyer. Marcus recommended the best." Ethan picked up the thick packet. The law firm's name was embossed in gold. Wickham and Sterling. "Sharks, he's recommending divorce lawyers for you now?" Ethan asked, a grim smile touching his lips. "He's a friend who cares about my well-being," she fired back, her eyes hard. "The papers are straightforward. I'm asking for half of all marital assets, the house, and appropriate spousal support given the disparity in our future earning potential." She gestured vaguely at the brownstone he'd painstakingly restored. "My lawyer is confident. Very confident." Ethan scanned the first page. The language was cold, legalese carving up a decade of shared life into negotiable chunks. He saw the figure she'd listed for his annual income, the valuation of the house. It was aggressive, designed to intimidate. "You're doing this because I wouldn't go to a sex club with your boss?" he asked, the absurdity of it almost laughable. Her composure cracked for a second, revealing pure venom. "I'm doing this because you're an anchor, Ethan. And I'm tired of dragging you through the life I'm meant to have. Sign the papers. Make it easy." Or, she took a step closer, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper. "I will take you to court, and I will break you. Marcus has resources. I have his full support. You'll be buried in legal motions until you have nothing left but the shirt on your back." She turned on her heel, the definitive click of her heels on the hardwood echoing through the hollow house. The door shut. The silence was absolute. Ethan stood in the kitchen, the divorce papers in one hand. He looked out the window at the bridge he was building in the distance, its skeletal form rising against the gray sky. It was a thing of balance, of precise counterweights. You couldn't just attack one side. You had to understand the entire structure. He didn't reach for a lawyer. Not yet. He reached for his laptop. He opened a browser and typed a name he'd come across in old engineering forums, in the whispers of the city's real power brokers. The people who built things that lasted, not the ones who just traded them. He typed Thorne plus debt covenant plus shell company. Then he typed another name, one he hadn't thought of in years, from his time consulting on a high-security government project. A man who understood that information was the ultimate load-bearing beam. He composed an email. The subject line was simple: structural integrity assessment. The game, as Marcus Thorne understood it, was one of social leverage and financial bullying. He thought Ethan was playing checkers. Ethan was about to demonstrate he'd been playing chess on a board Marcus didn't even know existed. And his first move wasn't to defend his king. It was to target the queen his opponent had so carelessly put into play. Finch was a man who existed in the negative space of the city's financial records. He wasn't a lawyer, not exactly. He was a crisis architect. Governments and the truly wealthy used him when they needed a problem dissolved, not just solved. Ethan had met him a decade ago during a bridge project plagued by corrupt inspectors. Finch had made the problem disappear in 48 hours. He was elderly, with hands that trembled slightly unless they were holding a document, at which point they became steady as stone. "Ethan," Finch said, not looking up from the divorce papers. His voice was like pages rustling. "Marital discord. How pedestrian. It's not the divorce, Alistair. It's the architect behind it." Ethan slid a file across the worn leather desk. It contained the results of his weeks of digital archaeology, tangled webs of LLCs linked to Thorne Innovations, property deeds in the names of offshore holding companies, loan documents from a private Swiss bank with viciously tight covenants. Finch put on a pair of half-moon spectacles and perused. For 5 minutes, the only sound was the soft flick of paper. Finally, he looked up, a ghost of a smile on his thin lips. "Marcus Thorne, the tech Dionysus. He throws at such loud parties, no one hears the foundation cracking. You believe he is orchestrating your wife's actions? I know he is. This is a hostile takeover of a life. My life. And you wish to countersue? For alienation of affection? A messy, public spectacle. You would lose." "No," Ethan said, leaning forward. "I don't want to sue him. I want to bankrupt him." Finch's eyebrows lifted a millimeter. He closed the file. "Explain." Ethan tapped a specific loan document. The Street Point Clare Revitalization Project. Thorne's big play. He used his company as collateral for a $200 million loan from his private bank, Oberhauser Trust, to buy and develop the old St. Clair factory district. Look at the covenant, clause 4.7. Finch read it. The loan is callable, immediately due in full, if Thorne's personal debt-to-asset ratio exceeds 3-1, or if there is a material, public scandal that severely damages the debtor's reputation and ability to lead. Standard morals clause for a vanity lender like Oberhauser. They love old-world propriety. Exactly, Ethan said. Now, look at his debt structure. He pulled out another sheet, a schematic he'd drawn that looked more like a bridge trust than a financial statement. He's leveraged to the hilt. His assets are mostly the inflated valuations of his own IP and these properties. His actual liquidity is a puddle. The St. Clair loan is the keystone. If it's called, the whole structure collapses. The banks will swarm. It will be a feeding frenzy. Finch steepled his fingers. You need 2 things. Proof his debt ratio is already over the limit, a forensic accounting nightmare, and a material public scandal, of the sort the refined partners at Oberhauser would find distasteful. Ethan allowed himself a small, cold smile. He opened his phone and showed Finch a series of photos, grainy but clear, taken from long-lens cameras and public social media posts Chloe had forgotten to make private. They showed Chloe and Marcus at the Gilded Oyster, her hand on his arm. Chloe getting into Marcus's Aston Martin at 1 a.m. Marcus, Chloe, and Sloane Thorne, a stunning, icy blonde, entering a discreet, unmarked door in a converted townhouse. The Veritas Club. He's not just her boss, Ethan said quietly. And this isn't just an affair. It's a pattern. A predatory pattern where he uses his position in this club to entangle and manipulate. He's done it before. I've found 2 other former junior executives who left their spouses after joining his inner circle. They both signed NDAs and vanished with small settlements. Finch studied the photos, his expression one of mild distaste, as if looking at a poorly executed forgery. Sordid, but is it a material, public scandal? In today's world, this is a Tuesday. Not if it's presented correctly, Ethan said. Not as a salacious affair, but as a systemic abuse of power, a toxic culture of coercion and marital sabotage at the highest level of a prominent company. A culture that jeopardizes investor confidence and partner relationships. The narrative isn't CEO sleeps with employee. Its CEO weaponizes lifestyle cult to destabilize lives and create legal liabilities for the firm. Oberhauser Trust funded cathedrals. They don't fund brothels. For the first time, Alastair Finch's eyes showed a spark of genuine interest. You've engineered a narrative. The scandal isn't the sex. It's the breach of fiduciary duty. The introduction of massive, unquantifiable human resource risk. He nodded slowly. The debt ratio is the hammer. The scandal is the chisel that pries loose the keystone. And the divorce. The divorce, Ethan said, his voice flat, is the courtroom where I hand her the chisel and smile while she uses it to demolish her own future. The divorce proceedings began in a bland conference room at Wickham and Sterling. Chloe's lawyer, a sleek pit bull named Amanda Wickham, laid out her demands with the bored confidence of someone used to winning. Half of everything. The house. Significant spousal support. She painted Ethan as a stagnant, emotionally withholding partner who had stifled Chloe's glorious ascent. Ethan's lawyer, a calm, middle-aged woman named Brenda Cox that Finch had quietly recommended, listened politely. She had the demeanor of a librarian. When it was her turn, Brenda didn't argue about love or stagnation. She opened a different file. We are, of course, prepared to discuss equitable division, she began. However, my client has significant concerns regarding the influence of a third party, Marcus Thorne, on these proceedings and on the dissolution of the marriage itself. Amanda Wickham scoffed. Your client's paranoia is not a material concern for this division. Brenda slid a document across the table. It was a motion to subpoena Marcus Thorne's financial records and communications related to Chloe. The stated legal basis was thin, but the implication was thunderous. We have reason to believe Mr. Thorne's relationship with Ms. Chloe Vance constitutes a conflict of interest that has artificially inflated her financial demands and constitutes undue influence. We also believe he may have used company resources to fund her legal counsel, which would be a breach of corporate governance we'd be compelled to report to his board. Chloe, who had been sitting with a look of detached triumph, went pale. That's absurd, is it? Brenda asked mildly. Your current lifestyle, the sudden change in counsel to the most expensive firm in the city, coincides precisely with your deepening personal relationship with your CEO, a man currently leveraged in several highly sensitive deals. A public inquiry into this entanglement could have severe repercussions for his business. We're simply seeking clarity. The message was received, loud and clear. Push us, and we will drag your sugar daddy into the light. Wickham adjourned the meeting for a private consultation with her client. The call from Marcus came to Ethan's personal phone that evening. The number was blocked, but the voice was unmistakably smooth, dripping with condescending amusement. Ethan, let's be adults. This is getting messy. Chloe deserves a clean break. Name a number to walk away. Ethan stood in his soon-to-be former home, looking at the bridge, now nearing completion, its lights glittering in the dusk. It's not about a number, Marcus. It's about the blueprint. You tried to build on my property without a permit. Now you're getting a stop work order. The amusement vanished. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm an engineer, Marcus. I deal with forces and tolerances all day. You're a gust of wind, and my bridge is built to withstand a hurricane. He hung up. The next move was Marcus's, and it was predictable. A smear campaign. Whispers to Ethan's firm about his unstable personal life affecting his work. A fake online profile attempting to catfish him. Ethan documented it all, feeding it to Finch. Then Finch made his move. A comprehensive, anonymously sourced dossier landed simultaneously at the offices of Oberhauser Trust in Zurich, the board of Thorne Innovations, and the desk of a notoriously meticulous financial journalist at the city's leading paper. The dossier did not scream. It whispered. It laid out, in precise, forensic detail, Thorne's catastrophic debt ratio, the way the St. Clair loan covenants had been breached for months. And in an appendix labeled Reputational Risk Assessment, it detailed the pattern of behavior. It linked Marcus, Chloe, and the Veritas Club to the two other broken marriages, complete with anonymized but credible testimony. The narrative was clear. Marcus Thorne's personal proclivities were not private. They were a corrosive business risk. The effect was instantaneous and brutal. Oberhauser Trust, panicked and puritanical, called the St. Clair loan. The news at the markets at 9 a.m. By noon, Thorne Innovation stock was in free fall. By 3 p.m., other creditors had filed notices. It was a corporate cardiac arrest. Ethan watched it unfold on a financial news channel in a quiet corner of a public library. He felt no thrill, only the cold satisfaction of a correct calculation. The final scene was not in a courtroom, but in the lobby of the Thorne Innovations building. Ethan had gone to retrieve the last of Chloe's things she demanded. He saw Marcus Thorne being escorted out by two security guards, a single box in his hands. The god was mortal, his suit rumpled, his face a mask of stunned fury. Reporters shouted questions about debt and sex cult allegations. Beside a potted fern, Chloe was waiting. She looked smaller, the expensive armor of her new life stripped away. The victory in her eyes had been replaced by a hollow, terrified confusion. The future she'd gambled everything on had just evaporated in a cloud of financial smoke and scandal. She saw Ethan. For a moment, their eyes met across the polished marble floor. He saw the dawning, horrible realization in her gaze. She had traded a builder for a bullshit artist. She had bet on the glittering facade and ignored the crumbling foundation. He offered no smile, no nod of vindication. He simply looked at her, the woman he had loved for 10 years, now a stranger standing in the ruins of the palace of lies she'd helped build. Then he turned, picked up the box of her things, and walked out into the crisp autumn air. His bridge was almost complete. It would stand for a century, a testament to balance, to strength, to the quiet, enduring power of things that are built to last.